Well, hi, everybody. Thank you much for joining us. We do appreciate it. This is a one-time special edition of our ShawLocal.com Bears Insider podcast. And it's really just to give you all a chance who are with us to join us, to ask some questions, to hear some conversation. It is noon on Monday. I'm sure you know by now that both General Manager Ryan Nagy and head coach Ryan Nagy.
It's all right. It's been a crazy 24 hours.
It's been a crazy week, and we're live, so I can't take that one back. But we'll just start over here, guys. I know you all know by now that General Manager Ryan Pace and head coach Matt Nagy have been relieved of their duties. We are about a little less than an hour short of visiting with team chairman George McCaskey to get some sense of what might be coming next. We know that there is a lot of excitement is the only word I can use. I was just saying to Kyle, I feel bad that people want to celebrate, guys getting fired and losing their jobs because there is another side to all of that. But there is no question, guys, as we have written, I think for 3 or 4 weeks now, that a change needed to be made at head coach. There has been so much uncertainty around Ryan Pace that I don't think anybody knew for sure until the announcement was made that he would be completely severed from the organization as well. And it is certainly reasonable to, celebrate a new beginning, to hope they get it right this time. There's going to be a ton of interest. I think we probably have as much or more insight as to who the best candidates are going to be for the new either president of football operations or general manager job, or both. We're going to find out from George in a little while what he's thinking, as well as who the next head coach is. And so hopefully folks will spend a lot of time with us here at ShawLocal.com as we bring that news to you. Sean, you're not new to the beat. You're a veteran now, your second year, but your first round of firings. So we'll let you go first, your reaction and your thoughts about all this.
Yeah, well, I think we got the result that we've been expecting here for a few weeks. We heard Matt Nagy last night after the Vikings game sort of stating his case, I guess you can say, but at that point it's a little bit too little too late. It'll be, you're right, Hub. This is my first time covering one of these, second year on the beat. So this is going to be a fun development to watch here. I'm really curious to see what George McCaskey has to say, because we've all speculated and wondered so much over the last year what exactly is going through his head. And we're finally going to get a chance to hear some answers today.
Kyle, I know that you've seen a few of these. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Where to start? The Ryan Pace news caught me a little by surprise. I think we all expected the Matt Nagy move to happen fairly quickly. I guess I want to start with your guys' thoughts last night. So, like, the Bears always send out, the post-game media availability, and they had their player availability scheduled this morning, which I'm pretty sure they're required to do on the final day as guys get ready to head out for the postseason, or for the off season. But they did not specify when or if the coach, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace would be made available. So I woke up this morning wondering if we were going to get news quickly or if this was going to be kind of drawn out over a few days. Did you guys expect it to come this morning still?
Well, I expected it to come at some point today is the answer to the question. I mean, whether it was 8 a.m. or noon or 1 o'clock at George's, I mean, they might have not said anything official until 1 o'clock. But this is one of the realities of social media. Is once an Adam Schefter reports it, it almost becomes fact, and 99% of the time it is, because Adam's the best at what he does. And he reported it, I don't know, overnight at some point or early this morning. I didn't look to see exactly when he reported it, but at that point, other reporters, without confirming it, start bringing it up as news. And so. The team is left with no option. I'm sure they would have preferred to have it come from George at his press conference, but that's not the way the world works these days. And so I would have been stunned if they had said no changes to the football organization or operation. There's no way that Ryan Pace could have just been left in complete charge to go hire another coach in business as usual. As we've reported, as I've reported for weeks now, everything I was hearing is that there was a chance that he'd have an opportunity to stay with the organization. And I think that's probably where George moved in the last couple days or weeks or whatever it may be. As far as Matt Nagy goes, Sean, I mean, I really like the guy. He's a class act. And there's some things that he has done very well by head coaching standards, but it was just dramatically outweighed by, the fact that the team was going in the wrong direction. And I don't know how anybody could have watched that game yesterday and thought that there was any better chance than a lottery ticket that he was going to keep his job.
Yeah, that game was a disaster. I mean, that was nearly a 30-point swing there from late second quarter through the second half. And I see a question in here, Kyle. Somebody's asking if
about yesterday.
You want to, about yesterday. You want to pull that up?
Mike Merkin is checking in with us, guys, and he says he only asked this because the Bears are so dysfunctional. But do you think the loss to the Vikings had any decision to keep or fire Pace? No, I don't. I think that it's the weight of the evidence that cost Ryan Pace his job. But now that we know that decision has been made, I can't say if it was made prior to the game, but I can say, Sean, that it was made independent of what happened in the game because Ryan Pace had nothing to do with that. That was all Matt Nagy, what you saw yesterday.
It was. And I guess the reason I bring that up is, just with how quickly things developed this morning, I think the decision was made long before that game, certainly before kickoff. And you see how quickly they moved to let these guys go this morning. I mean, that tells you that they were, confident in their thinking and wanting to take this in a new direction.
I don't think yesterday had any bearing on Ryan Pace. Yesterday was absolutely bizarre, which leads me to believe either Matt Nagy was told in advance or Matt knew what was coming and just said, screw it, I'm just going to get weird with this, which he kind of alluded to during the week talking about play calling. Now, even if he did decide to go that route, it was still a tough watch.
Well, he talked about having fun.
Yeah.
And I think had they not failed repeatedly on fourth down and in the red zone, they would have had fun, and
it wasn't much fun to watch. So.
Yeah. I mean, it just kept getting uglier and uglier. And again, guys, I mean, you're here with us, so you obviously are followers. If you haven't read my column at shawlocal.com yet, please do, because that was my takeaway from the game. Is it was almost as if Matt was determined to write his own epitaph, and he just got stubborn. And if we're ever going to use one word to describe the Matt Nagy era, I suspect it's going to be stubborn. Just would not acknowledge when something wasn't working and make an attempt to do something different to fix it. And I'm talking specifically about the 3 consecutive 4th and 1s on which he dropped back to pass. After the first 4th and 1, he succeeded by handing the ball to David Montgomery. You want to try it the first time, fine. But then the second time and the third time, and even in between, there was a 4th and 5, which I probably wouldn't have run the ball there. But I mean, it just got absurd, and
when your offensive line isn't blocking well and Andy Dalton is holding the ball for far too long.
Yeah.
It's like, please stop doing it.
He was literally running the other direction on one of those sacks.
I am not the world's biggest fan of Aqib Talib, color commentator on network broadcasts, but I am a big fan of Aqib Talib, the man and the football expert. This is a guy who's a Pro Bowl cornerback, and listening to him, I mean, he was flabbergasted, the third or fourth time, and basically finally said, you can't do this. And yet they were doing it. And so I can't imagine what Matt was thinking at that point. But what
was worse, those play calls yesterday or Joe Judge kneeling down multiple times there to make room to punt? Did you guys see that happen?
I noticed it on Twitter as I was trying to cover this game. I didn't really pay any attention to it.
There's not a lot of reason to pay much attention to the New York Giants at this point.
Guys, there obviously is a lot of attention at this point. I guess maybe because it's new as to, how it was decided, when it was decided. I would argue that it really doesn't matter at this point because the team hasn't been sold. It isn't going to be in the next 24 hours, I don't think. And so George is now going to go forward and redo his organization, his football operation again.
Sorry.
And that is, really where I would think the focus belongs. Will Matt Nagy work again in the NFL? Absolutely. Will Ryan Pace work again in the NFL? Absolutely. Will they ever get a chance to be a head coach and a GM again? Who knows? It's hard to say. I will say, and I know people don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. It's the truth, and you got to listen to it. The list of NFL head coaches who in their first 4 years get fired with a winning record, with 2 trips to the playoffs, with 1 losing season, and an NFL Coach of the Year award is a really short list. And the reason that Matt failed as a head coach is because he never learned how to be a head coach. He had some of the traits, but spent so much time focusing on his offense and so determined to have the best offense in the NFL and so determined to do it his way that he lost sight of the whole job. And he's young by coaching standards, and he's going to work somewhere else. It's going to take some time. But 5, 6, 7 years from now, after he's had some success, it wouldn't be at all surprising to see him get I'm not saying it'd be a good idea. We'll see what happens next, but it certainly wouldn't be surprising. And it's because really the most important thing with these guys is he never lost his locker room. I mean, he had players who wanted to play for him, and that's really the hardest thing for a lot of coaches to succeed at. Now, in the case of Ryan Pace, that's very different. I mean, he clearly wasn't ready for the GM job. He did some excellent evaluations, both in the first round and particularly on day 3. But, whether or not in his next job, he's going to get a chance to have enough responsibility to prove he's ready for another shot, there's no predicting that one, Sean.
No, and we spoke with several players this morning. I was a little surprised that we still, I think Schefter's tweet might have gone out at like 8:30 or something, and 8:15, 8:30. We still spoke with some players around 9 a.m. this morning. I think we talked to 4 guys, and yeah, obviously those guys, the players like playing for Nagy. There's a lot of things to like about the way he approaches the game. James Daniels was talking about just playing music at practice and the way that they, celebrate the victories in the locker room and little things like that matter when you're a player and that really keep your morale up when you're going through a tough stretch, which we've seen the Bears go through the last couple of years. So certainly you feel for those guys who were working with Matt Nagy and these guys every single day. That's a huge commitment that they all went through together, and it's sad from that perspective to see it end. But at the same time, results are results, and the Bears need to win more.
A couple. Can I jump in
Well,
first?
Let me just ask Sean a quick question, and I'm giving it to you. I don't know this, and I should, Sean, but those pressers are streamed live. Anybody can watch them. They can't participate. Do they then get archived somewhere at the Bears website? Can you
Yeah,
go back?
Oh, do they?
The ones that are live streamed, you can go back through their YouTube page and find them.
Well, the only reason I ask is go watch the James Daniels exchange with Potsy. Because if you missed it, you missed a treat. And it was vintage Potsy, and Daniels went toe to toe with him. And I don't know I think it may have been a draw. I don't know if it was a winner or a loser, but it's worth the watch. So I'm sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
No, I was going to say a couple things here is, I mean, his players played hard for him, until the end. And when we do go into this offseason, I thought, David Montgomery made a good point about the Bears taking a chance on him as he was falling down into the 3rd round. And it's scary when you think about it for players. Not everyone here is a frontline starter who's making, on a multi-year contract. There's a lot of guys that have built a reputation trying to make a name for themselves within that organization who are now going to have an entire new structure in place. And they're worried about, am I going to be on the outside looking in? So, there's a lot of trepidation from them. But someone asked, the other thing I was going to say, Matt Nagy, it would be far from the first coach we've seen fail in his first chance and then come back in the NFL and do a good job a decade later or so. And I had a question in here from Chad Williams about, does Nagy land in KC? Which I don't know if that's where he's going to land. I mean, it could be if Bieniemy does get a head coaching job, but you could see Nagy end up there helping with the offense. But, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I mean, who am I thinking of? I mean, he could end up with Frank Reich. He's friend with him down in Indianapolis.
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson, going to be in discussion for jobs this offseason. If Doug Peterson wants to land a head coaching job, you could see Matt Nagy there. I don't think Matt Nagy is going to be out of work for long. I would not be surprised to see him on a staff next year.
Yeah, the real question there, guys, is the contract that we were never allowed to know about. But I'm not sure of anything. My best guess is that there is a year left on that deal, which means that he's owed $4 or $5 million, whatever it may be. And the way this works when coaches, if that's the case, the way this works when coaches get fired, that's actually a good question for George at 1 o'clock. The way this works when coaches get fired is that the team that owes them that money is responsible for all of it. And if another team wants to hire him, they can pay him $10,000, $25,000 and get them to be a position coach or a coordinator. Position coaches normally in the, anywhere $250 to $450 range, coordinators in the $750 to $1 million range, and they can get them and let the Bears pay the freight. And so it becomes a question of, does Matt need a year off? Because he could certainly take that year off too, whether or not he has a year left on his contract. He's made a ton of money. So as far as, how quickly he lands, I don't know. As far as Kansas City, on one hand, Andy Reid had the quote, of all of his assistants, Matt Nagy was the most prepared to be a successful head coach in the NFL. They are close. Andy Reid, in some respects, my impression is almost like a second father figure to him. So it's a possibility, but I don't know how you do that with Eric Bieniemy still there as the offensive coordinator, because I don't think Eric Bieniemy is going to get a head coaching job. And whether that's fair or not, I don't know. But one of the reasons he's not going to get a head coaching job is because of the failure of Matt Nagy.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And if I'm Matt Nagy, I guess this is more of my personal opinion, but I would absolutely take a year off. He's got his kids set up here. A few of them are in high school. He's got a good living situation, I guess you can say. And it could be one of those cases where we saw with Doug Peterson last year, sort of taking the tour around training camp and learning from coaches in all different areas across the country for a year before stepping back into the waters.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about that, Sean, is that he has been treated so, I'm not going to say unfairly, but so badly that I don't know how much longer they want to stick around Chicago.
That's true. We saw that ugliness last November.
Yeah, they'll figure that part out. But his coaching career is not over, and Ryan's front office career is not over. They need to swallow the bitter pill and have a chance to refresh and recharge, and then they'll go back to work. I mean, guys, when you look at how Matt handled this the last 4 or 5 weeks, anybody who thinks he's done is just kidding themselves.
All right, let's jump in here with sorry, that's not the one I'm looking for here, but two-part question. We'll start with the Ted Phillips part, because as I said on Twitter, I did find it interesting that in the Bears press release that they did say it was George McCaskey meeting with the media and not Ted Phillips, which has been pretty much tradition with the Bears in recent years. Are you guys reading anything into that?
Well, I will when we see it. I don't know that Ted's not going to be there. I mean, obviously, George McCaskey is the person that everybody wants to hear from. Now, the last few times they have been together, and I'm waiting to see if they're together. I think because it's on Zoom and because we have not done a Zoom with multiple subjects, we presented our Chicago Media Jeff Dickerson Good Guy Award last week, and we had a tie between Tayshaun Gibson and Robert Quinn, and wanted to present it to them together. And I was told that the logistics of it were just too difficult, so we had them each individually on Zoom. So it could be as simple as that if Ted isn't there, that it's just because of the logistics. But I'm sure that George is going to be asked. Now, the flip side of that is if they come up and they are together, I think that would be a massive mistake on George's part. But, Sean, we'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm also curious, I guess, more than anything. I don't know, would I read into it? Yes and no. I don't know. It could be something as simple as that, like you're saying, Hub, that it's just logistically not going to work, or Ted's got other things on his plate. But I'm very curious to see what George has to say, and he's certainly going to be asked a lot about Ted today.
I would say George. I hope that he's prepared for that question and that they have a good answer. Whether it's Ted staying in his current role or not, they just can't be. It would be a mistake to kind of be wishy-washy about it, I guess is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I will tell you with absolute certainty, it's not going to be the first question, and if you're curious, watch and you'll understand why. But if it isn't the third or fourth or fifth, I'll be stunned, so, we'll know more about that in a little while.
I'm going to bring Michael's question back up there because the second part was any thoughts on a Harbaugh-Fangio reunion since they had so much success in San Francisco?
Well, I talked about that on the Score a little while ago. One of the most important things when guys go in for head coaching interviews is what kind of staff they're going to be able to put together, and being able to say with some certainty certain guys they can deliver. And Jim Harbaugh controls the entire NFL hiring cycle at this point. You've got his history with the Bears and Justin Fields here to be developed. You've got his history with the Raiders, although I think people may be overrating that a little bit. Stunned that Brian Flores was fired this morning, and yet the owner, Steve Ross, is one of the biggest donors to the University of Michigan we know of. And you've got Tua Tagovailoa to be developed. You got the Jacksonville job with Trevor Lawrence to be developed. And that's all secondary. Jim Harbaugh is the best coaching candidate out there. I mean, his record in the NFL, his record in college football is superior. It's not flawless. Nobody's is, but it's the best record available. The only reason there was criticism is Michigan is because Michigan's one of those 5 or 6 schools that lives in rare air where if you're not playing for a national championship every year, you haven't succeeded. But look at his record. The question is, what does Jim want to do? Does he want to stay at Ann Arbor? Or does he want to come to the NFL? There are multiple reports that he is at least listening to NFL offers. And so now you talk about, what's most likely to happen with Vic. If he doesn't want to take a year off and he's looking for a place to go, where's he most likely to go? Look at the success that him and Jim had together. So, I think that if Jim Harbaugh comes back to the NFL and Vic Fangio works as a defensive coordinator this year, that is absolutely the most likely scenario. But we don't know that either one of them is going to want to work in the NFL this year yet. That we've got to give a couple days as we start to get more information and work the phones, Sean, and get a better sense of what these guys are going to do.
Yeah, we don't really know what they're going to do. And, if you're Vic Fangio, wouldn't you want to ask for that head coaching interview? Who knows exactly what he's aiming towards. Obviously things came to an end over the weekend in Denver, but he's another guy.
They shouldn't have come to an end in Denver. That was,
I was a little surprised by that too. I mean, not surprised, you could kind of feel it coming, but I didn't think he did all that terrible of a job out there.
I thought he did a good job with what he was given. I mean, when you have, Teddy, nothing at quarterback. I mean, whoever they brought, nothing at quarterback. I thought that roster was built fairly well outside of the quarterback position. I don't know what you expect a guy to do. I thought they competed really well for what they had at the quarterback position.
Well, guys, I'll tell you why that happened. I mean, George Payton is a friend and as class and act as you're going to find. But when a new GM, a young GM, gets his first job and he doesn't get to hire his own guy, look at what happened to Ryan Pace. Now, I'm not, saying that that's the reason. I'm not saying that John Fox is the reason that Ryan Pace failed, but that's an example. Is that when you don't, get to control your own destiny, you struggle. And so, by all accounts, George and Vic have had a good relationship. That's what we've heard from Vic. That's what we've heard from George. But it's kind of the nature of the beast. And I think that's why that happened. And the other unfortunate reality of it is it's probably going to leave Vic permanently pigeonholed as a coordinator. For some guys that doesn't happen, but in his case, he waited until so late in his career to get that head job. And you look at how good the Denver defense was, and now that he's out of that head job, I'd be surprised if Vic gets another head job.
It would be nice to see him back in Chicago. I'll say that. I mean, I think he's really damn good as a defensive coordinator, and 2, he's just frankly a good guy to be around.
Well, guys,
I think he's good for your clubhouse or your locker room.
Let's go back to the initial question. If George McCaskey were able to pull off a Jim Harbaugh, Vic Fangio marriage, no matter who his president of football operations was, it's the grand slam. It's not just a home run. It's from fan acceptance, and from expectations. The problem is that those expectations then immediately put these guys, under the microscope, and everything is going to be microanalyzed and micromanaged. But that's a problem I think you're willing to take if you get 2 guys of that ilk. And whether it could happen or not, anybody who says they're knows right now is lying.
Here's a question. Oh, well, first off, we do have a list. Sean put together a list of potential coaching candidates. You can find that on shawlocal.com. And if you're not a subscriber to shawlocal.com, we actually have a deal going right now. You get all digital access to all of our content for 99 cents for the first 12 weeks going right now. So go ahead and find your way to shawlocal.com. That really helps us out, everyone. But my question, I guess, about Harbaugh, looking at that, would he want some kind of roster control at this stage of his career? I mean, considering his track record in San Francisco and then at Michigan, is he a high enough profile where he would try and make that play?
Well, with the number of jobs open, guys, he can name his terms. Is the answer to the question. What he would want, I can't speak for Jim. I don't know. I think that he showed a complete lack of ego this past year by replacing his entire staff practically with younger, more current coaches. Now, of course, of his choosing, but nonetheless, he basically said, okay, apparently I screwed this up. He redid it, and look what happened. So he can demand that, and he'll get it from somebody if, in fact, that's what he wants. But whether he will or not, I don't know. And guys, let me make a suggestion here. We're a little limited because we do have to get to our visit with George in a little while. So let's see if we can pop through as many questions as we can here, Kyle, and give folks who are good enough to join us a chance to get their questions answered.
Yeah, they're coming pretty quickly here. Let's see. I'm gonna go to pull up a random one. They're coming in, which is great, guys. We really appreciate everyone that's joined us and asking questions. We love it. We'll go to the front office role here. We'll go with, how do you feel about Rick Spielman?
Well, I tweeted, a few hours ago, and again, this is I've known Rick a long time, and he is a absolute quality individual, a quality professional. Did an outstanding job in Minnesota. Guys, you can't make the full measure of a general manager or a football ops guy or even a head coach Super Bowls. It's the ultimate goal. It's how you prove that you are the best or one of the best. But a lot of people who are great at their jobs for various reasons don't win one. Okay. And Rick Spielman did a lot more good than bad in Minnesota and in Miami before that. He got his start here in Chicago. It would be a very comfortable fit with the McCaskey family and would be a McCaskey-like hire. Now, is it the right hire? No, you've got all kinds of candidates out there. And if you do this right, you interview all the best candidates, and then you make your decisions. But I think Rick would be well worth an interview, and it would be justified if he got it, Sean.
And given what has transpired here with Ryan Pace over the last 7 years, if the Bears want somebody who has experience in this job, this guy has as much experience as you're going to find out there on the market. I agree that they should interview as many candidates and as many different candidates as they can. But ultimately, if you're looking for somebody who has proven that he can do the job, this would be a direction to go.
And of course, a lot of this comes down to here, as we're hopefully going to find out in the next hour or so, are they hiring strictly a general manager? Or are they hiring, two positions, a president of football operations and a general manager? Because then you're looking at obviously two layers to this. When it comes to Rick Spielman, I really, really like what he did on the offensive side of the ball in Minnesota. That offensive line was already pretty solid. I loved when he went out and got Darisaw this year. You move on from Stephon Diggs and you go out and get yourself a Justin Jefferson. Everything he did well on the offensive side the last few years, though, came at the expense of the defense. That defense has really struggled. They have not really drafted very well on that side of the ball. And, part of it, they haven't drafted a whole lot on that side of the ball because they've been so focused on offense. So it's kind of a mixed bag a little bit for me on Rick Spielman.
Well, but Kyle, also don't forget the reason for that is because they had one of the best defenses in the NFL under Rick Spielman, but the salary cap, bit them, and they had to blow it up, and they tried to do it on the fly in 1 year and they couldn't get it done. So so I say there's so many realities to this that getting it right. There's two or three guys. There's Bill Belichick. Right now, anyway, there's Bill Belichick, there's Andy Reid, there's John Harbaugh, and there's everybody else. And in the case of John Harbaugh, there's Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta. The Chiefs organization is interesting because I don't know if Brett Veach is the reason, they went through John Dorsey, who brought in a lot of the talent that they have, And then there's the franchise quarterback. So, you can be the best GM in the world and just not be in a position to eventually get your franchise quarterback. And so you end up where you end up.
All right, let's move on. We got a question about, we've got tons of questions in here. Just going to bring up, how about Leslie Frazier for a coaching position, guys?
Well, Dennis, Les is, I guess I've been around the Bears to like another old friend. And these guys all have something in common. What a remarkable guy. And you talk about, the Bears players playing for Matt Nagy. Players will play for Leslie Frazier. He is the definition of a player's coach. He is an excellent defensive football coach, has very successfully coordinated defenses in Minnesota and now Buffalo. And is another guy who is absolutely well worth an interview. Is he the best candidate out there based on the ways that he failed his first time around as a head coach? I would say not necessarily. Okay. I'm stronger on Todd Bowles is my first choice. Once we get through all this and all the interviewing is done, my hope is that if Jim Harbaugh is not available, that the Bears hire Todd Bowles. If Jim Harbaugh is available, then I got to rethink things, because God, what an embarrassment of riches that would be to be able to make that choice. I think that Les definitely is worthy of another shot. But if you're asking me, is he the best choice right now? I think there may be a few better choices, Sean.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about being in this situation that the Bears are in. I put together that list of candidates, and the list is long. There's a lot of guys who will probably, are at least worth reaching out to and calling and asking, hey, do you want to interview for this? I think I cut it down to like 15 names, Kyle, and even that was tough.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to me, is how do the Bears approach this? Do they, after the Matt Nagy experiments, do they want a more veteran head coach that takes a more holistic view of the team and is less hands-on with one side of the ball, whether it's former offensive defensive coordinator? Or do they want, the hot young coordinator? You mentioned one of your guys in there, Sean, is Brian Daboll, who I really like in Buffalo. It's a guy that had a lot of success in New England, went down to Alabama, had success there, and now has really helped that Buffalo offense develop, has helped Josh Allen develop. So, what do they prioritize coming off the Matt Nagy era?
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking Sean.
No. I was just kind of talking to anyone, I guess.
Well, what do you prioritize? Guys, I for some reason, there's something different about the professional sports business and these coaching and front office questions than there is in any other business. You prioritize finding the person who is multifaceted enough to be the best top executive. If you were looking for a new, chairman of IBM, you wouldn't go looking for the guy who knows how to work his computer the best. You'd be looking for the guy who is familiar with all that technology, who is an outstanding judge of talent, evaluator of people, who is extremely bright and introspective in how he does things, and who is multi-talented. And that's what you're looking for. So this idea that it has to be an offensive guy or a defensive guy, I can make the argument. I talked about this on The Score a little while ago. And by the way, for all of you with us, I'm going to be hosting tonight from 6 to 9 and taking your calls there as well. 670 The Score in Chicago. I tend to assume you're all here in town. I'm not so sure that they don't need a defensive mind more than an offensive mind right now, because you've got maybe one more year with this group to have a top 5 defense if they stay healthy and you do the right things and you add a couple pieces. There's no reason to believe that Robert Quinn's going to drop off the end of the table. Khalil Mack was playing as well as he ever has when he got hurt. Jalen Johnson and Roquan Smith are 2 brilliant young players. Maybe you bring back Bilal Nichols. Eddie Jackson played much better football this year, but that's going to be a road to navigate, because even if it works in 2022, by 23, certainly 24, you got to be realistic. That's got to be rebuilt. Offensively, I think all the young talent, I shouldn't say all. There is a lot of, clearly they got to get better at wide receiver. There's a lot of young talent here. And so if you're the best candidate for the head coaching job, you're the best guy to hire the right offensive coordinator. And so I just think this focus on one side of the ball or the other is a huge mistake.
So let's go here. I'm looking. How about I was surprised here. So Florio's with Fangio, but I bring that up just more to talk about Brian Flores. Pretty surprised to see him let go in Miami today.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick one and pass it off to Sean. I'm surprised. I don't think it was justified. I think it'll prove to be a mistake, but he's so young that I wonder if a lot of this just came down to his interactions and his communications. And again, look at where he's from. The Bill Belichick tree, the Josh McDaniels tree, the even the Charlie Weiss tree. I mean, these guys, they struggle a little bit when they get away from Bill. And I think that Brian Flores will absolutely be a head coach again, but he's not a guy that I think I'd want to take a chance on without giving him a chance to take a step back and at least figure out what went wrong in Miami.
Yeah, if you want to hire a guy who has a proven winning record, look at some of these resumes from these guys coming from underneath Belichick. Kyle, you mentioned Brian Dable. He's won 5 Super Bowls and a college football championship. Flores is another guy. I think he's won 4 Super Bowls in his time at New England. And I was also really surprised to see that come across the feed this morning. Given just everything that he's had to deal with there, and the start that they got off to this year was awful. And there's certainly questions about Tua and what that's going to look like moving forward. I was surprised to see them let him go.
And also, real quick, Brian Flores, I don't remember if he had the defensive coordinator title, but he was the linebackers coach. I believe he's a defensive guy. And so matching him up with Vic, I'm not sure, makes
I don't know how that would work.
Yeah. Hub, this question might be a little difficult for you as a Michigan fan.
Not difficult for me at all. Let's forget that Ryan Day is the head coach at Ohio State. I've said this repeatedly over and over again. I do not like hiring college head coaches, no matter how successful they've been, for their first NFL head coaching job. Now, I know Ryan had a couple years, I believe, as a quarterbacks coach in the NFL, but the statistics are overwhelming on how these guys fail. The difference between Harbaugh and Day has nothing to do with Ohio State and Michigan. It's that Jim Harbaugh is already a wildly successful NFL coach. He can do it. Ryan Day, people are just putting him and Justin Fields together as if that's all that matters. And it's not. The reason that these college coaches fail far more often than they succeed is because they get to the NFL and they have to compete on a level playing field. Ryan Day has never been on a level playing field. He has consistently had dramatically more talent than every team he's played for the most part. And that doesn't mean he's not going to be a great head coach in the NFL someday. It doesn't mean he's not a great coach. I'm not criticizing the guy. I'm just pointing out the reason I'm always so reluctant to consider these top college candidates.
Yeah, I'm with you, Hub. I mean, I've seen his name floated out there a lot, and I've been skeptical of that for those same reasons. He took over a program that was already rolling, and he has 2 years of experience as an NFL quarterbacks coach, 2015 with the Eagles, 2016 with the 49ers. And that is it as far as NFL experience.
Does his connection with Urban Meyer and how poorly things went in Jacksonville maybe tarnish his resume a little bit, at least for this year with NFL franchises?
I don't think so. I don't think
shouldn't.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, is he to be punished for taking a good job because Urban Meyer offered it to him? I don't know him personally. If I knew him personally and I thought there was a lot of Urban Meyer in him, I'd be worried, but he could be a completely different. And by the way, let me go a step further. Based on the problems that Urban Meyer caused at Ohio State, and the reason that Ryan got the job in the first place is I would assume the people hiring at Ohio State tried to make sure that Ryan Day wasn't going to bring some of the crap with him that they got from Urban Meyer. So no, I don't think he should be painted with that brush at all.
Yeah, I agree. Just wondering. All right. We have a couple questions in here about why not Dave Toub?
Dave Toub, I think, is a great head coaching candidate. I think he absolutely should get an interview. Now, another guy that I know pretty well, and think the world of. But my thinking on him is that I don't understand why more special teams coordinators don't get more opportunities and more head jobs, because the few who do are remarkably successful. I mean, you look at a John Harbaugh, that's where he came from. That's where Mike Ditka actually came from originally. That's where Dick Vermeil came from. There are other examples. They're just not popping in my mind. Well, look at what Rich Bisaccia did right now. That was an impossible situation he was put in with the Raiders. And you look at, what they've done to this point. So I would love to see Dave get a crack. But guys, I don't really want to spend a lot of time discussing the head coach until I know who's going to be doing the hiring. I think that's the issue facing George McCaskey right now. And I understand that people are excited that there's great names out there, but until we know who's going to be making that decision, it's pretty hard to give you an evaluation.
Yeah, and this is going to take some time. Unfortunately, they need to get a GM before they can get a coach, and we're going to have to. It's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, and thinking of Dave Tobe, if you wanted to go the special teams route, you might already have someone in house. I mean, I think we all agree that Chris Tabor is a really good special teams coordinator and a guy that probably should get a look, at least get an interview at some point before his NFL coaching career is over.
I agree, and I love Chris, and wouldn't object to that as a consideration. The problem is that he's Dave Tobe's prodigy, and so for him to get there before Dave, man, he shouldn't be punished for that. But I mean, why not talk to the guy who taught him before you talk to him?
This is a question more of a comment, but it made me chuckle here. Hub, we're not excited. We're terrified. There's a big difference. And that is the most Bears fan comment we'll get all day.
Well,
there's a sense of dread coming towards this 1:00 George McCaskey meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. So, it doesn't do you any good. I get where you're coming from, but I'd move past it.
You know what? If we were told today that Ryan Pace was staying, I would get that dread. But with the Bears making a change at both coach and in the front office, I think you should, at least for now, until they bungle it, you should have some optimism for at least today. It's also nice and sunny in January in Chicago, and it's a little cold, but
Kyle, I'm going to go a step further. You don't have to have optimism if you don't want, but keep an open mind. Let's at least get some facts in front of us. Let's have what we're talking about be based in reality and not wild opinions and fan dissatisfaction and frustration. Let's find out what the new ground rules are going to be, and then let's watch and see if they follow them and if they bring them to a good end.
Yeah, we should wrap up here as we start getting near 1:00. We don't want to miss, obviously, the start of George McCaskey's press conference. So we'll end it here on a question that just came in from Timothy Wire, which is what we're all going to find out here. Anyone you'd like to see make the head coach and GM hire? And that's what we're probably going to find out, right, guys? How is this all going to work? Is it going to be George and Ted doing it, or do we get a new structure put into place?
Well, I'd like to have some confidence that Ted has absolutely nothing to do with it. And that is not, Ted Phillips' title is president and CEO of the football team. And he has had limited involvement in the football side of it. And yet it's all people want to crucify him for. And the organization has actually done some very good things, under his tenure. They got a new stadium built, even if it wasn't the best stadium they could have gotten. They have built what is universally acknowledged as one of the top 3 or 4 facilities in the National Football League. If in fact it's not the best, they have completely overhauled their marketing department in the last decade and a half or so, and made it amongst the better groups in the NFL. That's all on Ted's watch, and yet, because they do put him front and center with a lot of this football stuff, he also is far more responsibility for the failures than Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. He's overseen 21 years of it or whatever it's been now. I think I want to say 99 or 2000. So, whatever it may be. And he has to own that, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there's no need for Ted to be removed or disgraced, but he has failed consistently on the football side to whatever extent his participation has been. So I do think it's important he be completely removed from this. Now, George and the McCaskies own the team, and as long as they own the team, they're going to make the hire. So I think the question is, who would we like to see advising them, if in fact anybody is advising them? And if there's any truth to the rumors I've heard about Bill Polian, I don't think you could do much better. That would probably be my first choice. There are other quality folks out there, but I don't know, who all is making themselves available to the Bears. So I'll say Polian and stay with that, Sean.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that you would hope that they would listen to multiple voices, not just bring in Ernie Accorsi and listen to what he has to say, but bring in multiple people. You want to hear a difference of opinion. You want to hear people from different football backgrounds, whether that's front office, player, coach, whatever. You would hope that they're taking a broad approach to this. And I just think, if they're going to bring people in to help them make this decision, that they need to bring multiple voices in.
Yeah, I would say I don't want this to sound ageist, but you don't want it to be the old guard. I like Ernie Accorsi. I'd prefer to see someone who has a background in analytics, that understands that side of the football operation, that understands how to run a very modern football team.
Well, guys, we are going to have to wrap it up. We have about 10 minutes to get ready for meeting with George McCaskey. Sean and I will both be there. I'm guessing you'll be able to watch it at chicagobears.com. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume you will be able to. And want to remind everybody, I'll be hosting tonight on The Score from 6 to 9. So happy to talk to you about all this then as well. ShawLocal.com, guys, you're not going to get any better coverage of what's about to happen with the Chicago Bears, both in terms of how they either restructure the front office or stay with what they have in terms of their head coaching hiring. We will be reporting for you hourly, half hourly if we have to. We'll see how the news breaks. And we thank you again for joining us here today. We will be back on our regular podcast schedule Friday morning at 9:30. For those of you who are new to us today, you can join our podcast live every week, just like you got in today. Come to Sean, I should say at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors, at Hub _Arkush. Come through YouTube. And if you do not wish to join us live as we record our podcast, then go to the App Store on your phone or iTunes and download a subscription. But we're going to have the best coverage of the Chicago Bears for you anywhere as we go forward from here. So thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. And let's all have some fun with it. There's change coming, and let's hope that it's for the better. We'll see. Talk to you again soon.